When did my freedom become a problem? I've asked myself this question more times than I care to admit. It didn't happen overnight, you know, it started small, subtle. One day, my daughter insisted on doing my grocery shopping just to help. Then, my son began handling my bills, saying it was safer that way. And before I realized it, I was no longer making decisions not about what I eat, not about where I go, not even about how I spend my afternoons. They call it love, they call it care. But sometimes, it doesn't feel like either. It feels like control. Have you ever felt that way? Like your life slowly stopped being yours? Like the people you raised, the ones you gave everything for, somehow turned your own independence into a risk, something to manage, something to restrict. I used to drive myself to my doctor appointments. I used to have the keys to my own home. Now, I have to check first or wait for someone because it's for my own good. But is it really? They mean well, I know they do. I know their hearts. But somewhere along the way, the line between protection and domination got blurred. And what they call safety started to feel like silence, like being invisible in my own story. Stay with me, because what I'm about to share might sound all too familiar, or it might open your eyes to something you hadn't seen before. This isn't just about me. It's about countless parents, especially mothers, who spent a lifetime making choices, solving problems, building families, only to wake up one day and realize they're no longer trusted to manage their own lives. Just because we're aging doesn't mean we've lost the right to decide. There's a word people don't like to use when they talk about caring for the elderly: control. But let's be honest, sometimes that's exactly what it becomes. Wrapped in kindness, dressed up as concern, hidden behind phrases like "we're just trying to help" or "you don't need to worry about that anymore." But I do worry, because I'm still here, I'm still me, and I still want to live a life that feels like mine. You might be wondering, how do you tell the difference? How do you know when love has turned into limitation? The answer isn't always obvious. Sometimes it's found in the tone of voice, in the decisions made without asking, in the way your calendar starts to fill with things they decided were best for you. The truth is, we live longer now, and that's a blessing. But with this gift of time comes a new challenge. How do we maintain our autonomy in old age when the world and even our own children start treating us like we're incapable? What happens when emotional dependency reverses direction, when the child begins to need the parent to be dependent? When our children take over, not because we asked, but because they're afraid to let go. If you've ever felt caught in that strange, painful space between being loved and being managed, then this conversation is for you. Because what I've come to realize is that the desire to protect can sometimes become a need to control, and that difference matters more than most people think. And it's exactly that difference we're going to explore next. And maybe you've felt this too. Maybe you've sat in silence, nodding politely while someone else made choices for you, choices that once belonged to you. Maybe you've had that lump in your throat, that quiet ache of wanting to say, "I'm still capable," but stopping yourself because you didn't want to sound ungrateful. If this resonates with you even a little, I want you to know something. You're not alone. There are so many of us navigating this invisible struggle between love and limits, care and control. And I truly believe that sharing our stories can help others see what's often hidden behind good intentions. So if this has touched you, if it reminds you of something you've lived or something you're living right now, please take a moment to leave a comment below. Tell me what part spoke to you most. Tell me your story, your thoughts, your feelings. This space was created for that, for you. And if you feel that this message matters, if it deserves to reach more people who might be silently going through the same thing, click that like button. It may seem like a small gesture, but it tells the platform and the world that these conversations are worth having. And if you want to keep walking conmigo through stories like this, reflections that touch the heart and challenge the silence, then hit that subscribe button. When you subscribe, you're not just following a channel, you're helping build a space where voices like ours are heard, respected, and valued. The truth is, your presence here matters. Your voice matters. And as we move forward, I want you to stay with me, because what comes next might help you see this whole situation through a new lens. It all started with the simplest things. A little help with online banking. My son said, "Don't worry, Mom, these apps are too confusing. I'll take care of it for you." And I remember thinking, well, that's kind of him. Maybe it really is easier this way. Then came the groceries. My daughter began picking them up after work. "You don't need to carry heavy bags," she said, handing me the receipt with a smile. I thanked her, of course I did. It felt like love. It looked like love. But slowly, without realizing, I was handing over pieces of my life, tiny, ordinary decisions that used to be mine. At first it was convenient, practical, even, but soon, it wasn't just the groceries or the bank. It was the way they started talking over me at doctor appointments, how they began deciding what time I should eat, or how often I should leave the house. And then, without much discussion, came the big one. You shouldn't be living alone anymore. They meant well. I know they did. They were worried. They had read articles about falls, memory loss, loneliness. They heard stories of parents left in dangerous situations, forgotten or neglected. And they didn't want that for me. But what they didn't see, what no one talks about, is the truth, hidden behind the help, that every little favor chips away at something essential, at who I am, at who I still want to be. You see, autonomy isn't about rejecting love. It's about being trusted to participate in your own life. It's the freedom to choose even if those choices aren't perfect. But somewhere along this journey, we began equating age with inability. We stopped seeing older people as capable of making decisions and started seeing them as fragile, breakable, in need of management. And once that mindset settles in, the shift from support to supervision happens almost without notice. There's a phrase I once heard: soft control. It's not loud, it's not cruel. It doesn't come with shouting or harsh rules. It comes wrapped in smiles, in warm hands, in softly spoken sentences like, "We just want what's best for you." It disguises itself as love, but at its core, it removes your right to choose. And that's where the damage starts, not just in the logistics of life, but in the deeper layers of identity, confidence, and purpose. Because when someone else is always deciding for you what to wear, when to rest, who you can see, what time you should take your pills, you begin to doubt your own ability to think clearly. Even the sharpest mind can grow foggy under constant supervision. The impact isn't just external, it shifts your mental framework, rewiring how you see yourself. You begin to play a role instead of living your truth. The hardest part, it's how invisible it all is. From the outside, it looks like a loving family, doing the right thing. But behind closed doors, in the quiet of my thoughts, I began asking myself, when did my voice stop counting? When did concern become permission to overrule me? This kind of transformation doesn't happen in a single moment. It unfolds over time, gently pulling the thread of independence until the whole fabric unravels. One day you're being helped, the next, you're being handled. And in the middle of that shift, the people around you don't see what's being taken because it wasn't taken by force. It was surrendered slowly, in the name of love. And let's be honest, sometimes it's easier that way. Sometimes, after a long life of carrying others, it's tempting to just let them carry you. But here's the truth: no one likes to say out loud, being cared for is not the same as being controlled. And even when you're tired, even when things get harder to manage, your dignity doesn't expire. Now, I want to go even deeper into this conversation, because what we're really talking about is more than just habits or routines. It's a shift in how our families function. It's about how fear, guilt, and love get tangled together in the decisions we make for the people we care about. So tell me, does this make sense to you? Write it down in the comments. This makes sense to me. Let's keep this conversation real, honest, and human, just like it should be. There's something deeply unsettling about feeling alive but no longer living for yourself. You wake up, eat, take your medication, maybe watch a bit of television, maybe read a few pages of a book, but none of it feels like it belongs to you. The choices were made for you, the routine laid out by someone else's hands, and slowly, you begin to disappear within your own life. You're still breathing, still functioning, still here, but it's like watching your story unfold from the outside, without being allowed to turn the pages. That's the part most people don't talk about. The part that doesn't show up in the medical charts or family group texts. The part that hides behind polite smiles and quiet compliance. It's the invisible erosion of autonomy, and it's not just about control, it's about identity. Because when your autonomy is quietly removed, what gets taken with it isn't just your ability to choose. It's your confidence, your sense of purpose, your inner voice, the one that used to say, "I know what's best for me," starts to stutter. And even when you do speak up, something inside you hesitates, wondering if it's worth the trouble, wondering if anyone's really listening. You begin to doubt yourself. You second guess your memory, your decisions, even your instincts. The people around you act like they know better. And over time, you start to believe them. That slow, internal shift where your own judgment becomes a question mark instead of a compass carries a silent weight. It's not loud, it doesn't scream, but it sinks in deep. And then comes the sadness. Not the dramatic, visible kind, but a quiet heaviness that lingers in the background of everything. You find yourself staring out the window longer than usual. You forget what day it is, not because of age, but because the days started blending into each other, because nothing new is happening, because you stopped being asked what you want to do. There's a term some psychologists use, learned helplessness. It's when someone begins to accept a lack of control over their circumstances and stops trying to change them, even when change is possible. I think that's one of the most dangerous byproducts of excessive care. When love takes away freedom, it doesn't feel like love anymore. It feels like being managed, handled, put in a place. And the worst part is, you don't always see it happening until one day you realize, I'm no longer driving my own life. The emotional impact of that is more powerful than most people realize. It can lead to anxiety, resentment, and deep loneliness. Even when you're surrounded by people, you begin to feel like a burden, even if no one says it out loud. You wonder if it's easier for them when you don't push back. So, you stop pushing. And in that silence, your world shrinks. This shrinking of the soul doesn't just affect the parent. It creates tension in the whole family dynamic. You may smile at the dinner table, but inside, there's a tug-of-war between dependence and dignity. And whether they realize it or not, your children feel that too. They may act frustrated, impatient, or overbearing, but many times, that behavior is rooted in fear. Fear of losing you, fear of watching you decline. And instead of facing that fear, they try to control it. But control doesn't protect, it distances. It builds walls. And what started as an act of love becomes a source of quiet conflict. Conversations get shorter. Patience runs thinner. You say less. They assume more. And the gap between hearts grows wider. Now, I want to go even deeper into this subject. Because what we're uncovering isn't just about aging or parenting, it's about how we define respect, how we interpret responsibility, and how we rewrite the roles we've played all our lives. This is about transformation, about shifting our mentality from protect at all costs to trust with compassion, about seeing the truth behind the understanding the real impact they have on the people we love. So, if this reflection speaks to you in any way, if any part of it echoes something inside you, write in the comments. I'm on this journey too. Let's keep this dialogue honest, because the truth is more powerful when it's shared. It took me a while to see it from their side. At first, all I could feel was the weight of everything I was losing: my space, my rhythm, my say in the life I'd built. But over time, when the silence between us grew too loud, I started to look a little deeper. I began to understand that maybe what I was experiencing as control, they were offering as love, that underneath the decisions they made for me without me, there wasn't just authority. There was fear. Fear of something going wrong. Fear of not noticing the signs in time. Fear of losing me. And that kind of fear, quiet, constant, unspoken, can make people act in ways they don't even fully understand. I think that's what happens to a lot of adult children when their parents start aging. They want to hold on, protect, fix. But love mixed with fear doesn't always lead to clarity. It often leads to overcorrection, to taking charge, to assuming they're doing what's best without realizing that best doesn't mean without you. What I've come to notice is that there's a generational story unfolding beneath the surface. My children grew up watching me take care of everything. I was the strong one, the planner, the one who kept the family going through every season. So when they saw even a hint of fragility in me, when I forgot an appointment or struggled to open a jar, it wasn't just about that one moment. It shook something deeper in them. It reminded them that I won't be here forever. And instead of sitting with that reality, they moved into action. Fix it, manage it, control it. That's where the conflict really begins, not in the actions themselves, but in the emotions behind them. There's guilt too. I can see it. The kind that whispers, you weren't around enough when she needed you, or you should have called more. And guilt has a strange way of turning into overcompensation. Suddenly, they're showing up with too many suggestions, too many solutions, too many you shoulds. And though the intention is love, the impact feels suffocating. They don't mean to hurt, they're trying to help. But help without consent becomes something else entirely. That's the invisible tension between us. On one side, I'm mourning the quiet loss of agency, the freedom to live without having to explain myself. On the other side, they're carrying the heavy burden of responsibility, often without being asked to. It's like we're both trying to love each other, but we're doing it in ways that clash. That's the irony. We're not fighting because we don't care. We're struggling because we care so much, and we don't know how to navigate that without stepping on each other's dignity. And here's the truth that not many want to admit. Sometimes, our children are following patterns they never questioned. They're parenting the way they saw others do it. Maybe they watched their own parents grow old and wished they had done more. Maybe they're reacting to stories they've heard. The people who were left alone, neglected, forgotten, and so they go too far in the other direction. Overcorrecting, overprotecting, overstepping. That's why these conversations matter. Because there's a truth beneath the surface. A truth that rarely gets said out loud. They're not just afraid of losing us. They're afraid of failing us. They see aging as decline, not evolution, as something to fight, not something to honor. And when we try to reclaim our voice, they sometimes take it as resistance, not resilience. But we are still resilient. We've lived enough years to know what it means to fall and rise again, what it means to decide and deal with the consequences, what it means to live really, live by choice, not permission. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because what's really at stake here isn't just a parent's routine or a child's concern. It's the core of the relationship itself, the dynamic that has to shift if we want to keep love and respect walking side by side. And for that to happen, both sides need to see what's been hidden in the shadows, the unspoken fears, the generational patterns, the mentalities that need to evolve. Comment, that makes sense to me, because when we recognize the truth, transformation begins. It starts with a gesture, something small, a decision made for you instead of with you. And at first, it doesn't seem like much. You tell yourself it's just a detail, that it's easier this way, that maybe they're right. But then it happens again. A doctor's appointment is scheduled without asking if the time works for you. A meal plan is printed and stuck to the fridge with the explanation, "It's healthier this way, Mom." The TV remote disappears for days. You were watching too much news, and suddenly, you begin to notice the pattern. Decisions are no longer yours to make. The choices that once felt like extensions of who you are, what you eat, when you rest, how you spend your money, have slowly been taken off your plate. And always, always, under the same justification, it's for your own good. I've heard that phrase so many times, it almost stopped having meaning. But it's not just the words, it's the tone, the tilt of the head, the gentle but firm voice that says, "Me, você não entende mais das coisas." That phrase cuts deeper than anyone realizes, because it doesn't just question your decision-making, it questions your value. It rewrites your role in your own life. That's the moment when love begins to cross the line. Not because it stopped being love, but because it forgot to respect. And without respect, care turns into command. There's a truth hidden in the shadows of every well-meaning gesture, and it's this. When people start making decisions for you, without asking, they're no longer protecting you. They're overriding you. It might be wrapped in affection, in a sense of duty, even in fear, but the impact is erasure. You stop being seen as a person with preferences and become a project to be managed. It's not always obvious. The lines blur slowly. One day they start calling the bank for you, and a few months later, you no longer know your own balance. They say things like, "You don't need to worry about that anymore." And while that may sound like kindness on the surface, underneath it is a silent message. You are no longer capable. And that message, whether they say it aloud or not, begins to echo. It changes the way they look at you. It changes the way you look at yourself. You start to hesitate before speaking up. You wonder if what you feel is valid. You shrink a little sometimes just to avoid another conversation where you're reminded of everything you apparently can't do anymore. What they don't see is that this shift creates distance, not just physical space, but emotional space. Every time they take the wheel without asking if you're okay with it, they're also driving you away from a place of mutual trust. You stop feeling like a participant in the relationship and start feeling like an obligation, and no one wants to be that. I've seen it in other families, to how rules begin to replace relationships. They'll say, "She has to go to bed by 10, or "She can't go out alone anymore." But no one asks, how does she feel about that? That question vanishes. Because somewhere along the line, the need to control the risk outweighed the need to preserve the person. And yet, the person is still there. Inside the body that's maybe slower, more tired, maybe more fragile, there's still a voice that wants to be heard, a mind that wants to be respected, a heart that wants to be consulted, not corrected. Now, I want to go even deeper into this subject, because what's really being tested here isn't just the relationship between parent and child, it's the balance of power in love. It's the way affection, when unchecked, can transform into domination without even realizing it. And it's the decisions we make, the mindsets we adopt, the truths we avoid, all of which shape whether that love will heal or silence. Comment: that makes sense to me. Because when we name what we feel, we begin to reclaim the space we should never have lost. There was a moment, it wasn't loud or dramatic, when something inside me simply woke up, a small flame. A calm but firm discomfort, whispering, "This isn't right." I was sitting at the table, listening to my son on the phone with the doctor, scheduling an appointment for me, without even asking if the day worked. And right there, in that seemingly ordinary moment, everything took on a new meaning. I wasn't being protected. I was being bypassed. And in that simple, routine gesture, I realized the hidden truth behind so many others. I had stopped being heard. It's strange how awareness shows up. It doesn't arrive with a bang. It comes as a quiet whisper, a steady voice reminding you that you're still here, that you still know what you want, what you feel, what you need, and that no one, no matter how well-intentioned, should be deciding those things for you. That was the moment I understood. This isn't rebellion, it's dignity. Reclaiming your voice after so much silence isn't easy. You get used to going along, not causing trouble, doing what's best for everyone. But the truth is, every time we swallow our preferences to keep the peace, we're allowing love to turn into supervision. And over time, that erodes something essential: our sense of self, the clarity of our choices, the freedom to live life on our own terms. Even as we grow older, relearning how to set healthy boundaries is a journey. And that journey begins with one internal decision: to stop staying quiet about things that hurt, even if they come wrapped in affection. Because real love doesn't impose, it invites, it listens, it includes. And for that to happen, the conversation has to be mutual. It's not enough for them to worry about me. They need to talk to me, hear me, see me as someone who still has real desires, ideas, and valid opinions. That's when everything begins to transform. When you start saying things you once thought were off limits. "I'd rather do it this way," or "that doesn't work for me." It might sound simple, but those words carry enormous power, because they're not just statements, they're acts of reclaiming. They're milestones in an inner turning point that says, "I respect myself enough to set limits." And this isn't about confrontation, it's about reconnection, about rebuilding a relationship where care doesn't erase voice, where protection doesn't replace presence, where parents and children can see each other as adults, even if one of them has silver hair. Often, what's missing isn't love, it's space. Space to stumble, to try, to choose. And yes, sometimes that means I'll make choices they wouldn't make. But isn't that the essence of freedom? When I begin taking back my role in the small daily decisions, I'm not acting out, I'm remembering who I am. And more than that, I'm showing my children that it's possible to love and respect at the same time. That care doesn't have to mean control. That trust is a bond strengthened by listening, not by rules. Of course, it's not always smooth. At first, they push back. They think I'm being too sensitive or making a fuss. But over time, with gentleness and consistency, they start to understand. Because true boundaries don't push people away. They protect the bond. They give love a framework. They give it shape. And in that space, I realize something important. Living with autonomy isn't a privilege of the young. It's a right every human being deserves, at every stage of life. Getting older doesn't mean surrendering your voice. It means living with more clarity about what matters, claiming the space to express it. That starts when you stop waiting for permission to be who you've always been. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject. Because this turning point, this moment when we reclaim our voice, also demands the courage to handle the reactions, the shifts, and the personal transformation that follows. Because when you speak up, the world around you changes too, and that's something we need to talk about. Write in the comments, "I'm on this journey too," because Naming this moment is the first step toward reconnecting with everything that makes you whole. There's a delicate shift that happens when love becomes fear dressed as protection. And it's rarely intentional. That's what makes it so difficult to recognize. The people we love the most, the ones who hold our hearts and memories, begin to move out of sync with us not because they don't care, but because they care so much that they stop trusting us to be who we are. And that's where the slow erosion begins, not of love, but of space, of voice, of the right to still be seen as someone whole. We often think love is about doing everything we can for someone, but real love, love that nurtures, not controls, is also about knowing when to step back. It's about trusting that the person you care for still holds their own compass, even if they walk a little slower now, even if they forget where they put their keys, or need to write things down, or nap a little longer in the afternoon. None of those things erase a person's capacity to choose, they just change the rhythm of how they move through life. What I've learned is that loving someone deeply also means allowing them to remain themselves, and that includes their flaws, their stubbornness, their quiet routines. To love me fully means to let me be in charge of my story, even if you'd write it differently. There's a kind of grief in feeling like you're no longer trusted. It's quiet, but it builds. Every time someone says, "Let me handle it," you don't need to worry. It might sound like relief, but underneath, what I often feel is dismissed. Like my instincts don't matter. Like I'm no longer expected to think, decide, or participate. And the more it happens, the more invisible I feel. You don't stop being a person just because your hair turns gray. Your life doesn't become less yours just because other people start calling it fragile. That's the truth we don't say out loud enough. Because there's this unspoken idea that as we age, we should naturally hand over the wheel. But here's the thing, dignity doesn't have an expiration date. The ability to decide, to have preferences, to speak up and say this is what I want, doesn't vanish at a certain age. It only fades if we let others take it from us. I've started to notice how many people confuse helping with controlling. And while both can come from love, they're worlds apart in how they feel. One makes you feel supported, the other makes you feel replaced. It's a subtle but powerful difference. Sometimes it's a daughter deciding what clothes her mother should wear. Sometimes it's a son who reorganizes the house and calls it more practical. And sometimes it's a quiet decision, like handling the bills or pre-approving every doctor's note, without ever asking, "What do you think?" That question, "What do you think?" is like oxygen. Without it, we suffocate slowly and silently. We don't always need someone to rescue us. Sometimes, what we need most is someone to sit beside us and say, "I trust you." Someone who sees us not just as aging bodies, but as thinking, feeling, human beings with decades of lived experience, with insights that matter, with voices that still deserve space. Now, I want to go even deeper into this subject. Because the truth is, this isn't just about one relationship. It's about a mindset that touches families everywhere. And if we don't talk about it, if we don't look honestly at what's happening in the name of love, we end up reinforcing a cycle where care becomes control and affection becomes silence. Because here's the truth that's stayed with me. Caring is standing beside someone. Controlling is stepping into their place. And when that line gets blurred, no one wins. The parent feels erased. The child feels burdened. And what was supposed to bring connection ends up creating distance. So I leave this thought hanging gently in the air, not as a judgment, but as an invitation. Ask yourself, honestly, are you caring, or are you deciding for someone else? And if you're on the other side, ask, are you being cared for, or are you being silenced? These questions are not meant to accuse, they're meant to open space for understanding, for reconnection, for a new way of loving that honors not just the heart, but also the autonomy of the people we love. Comment here, this makes sense to me, because naming what we feel is the first act of reclaiming the space we've always deserved. If you've made it all the way to the end of this video, thank you truly. I know these reflections go deep. They're not always easy to sit with, but they matter. And if at any point you felt seen, understood, or found words for something you've been carrying in silence, then this time we shared was worth it. If conversations like this resonate with you, if they help you see your relationships with more clarity, more compassion, and more truth, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Not out of obligation, but because I want to keep building this space with you. A space for honest stories, real questions, and meaningful connection. And if you're still here, leave a comment below that says, "I'm with you until the end." It's a small phrase, but it means a lot. It tells me you're part of this, that this message found a home in you too. If this video touched you in any way, tap the like button. That little gesture tells me on the platform that these conversations are worth having, and that someone out there needed to hear this today. There's another video right here that continues this journey. Click on it and come with me. We still have so much to talk about.